Happy Sunday, everybody. We have had a strong week of wrestling and wrestling related content, and the week ahead looks pretty good as well. I have a few things to talk about since I last touched base at the end of, or middle of last week, rather. I'll start backwards and work my way from there. Yesterday, you had Impact. Impact Wrestling's having a big weekend right now, and yesterday was their show, All Glory. All Glory wasn't without its problems, though. Talent wise, things went without a hitch. I think the matches were really good, the ones that we did get to see. Production wise, it was a mess. You had, and it wasn't necessarily TNA's entire fault. I think they had the best laid plans of mice and men that just happened to fall apart. They apparently had a camera crew that they were going to work with, but that just didn't come through. So they had to improvise quickly and started very late, which was a shame. But when they did get started last night, they had a they just used their cell phone. I'll just put it that way. They used their cell phone to show the event, and I watched it on Twitch. Um, you know, it's one thing to try your best, but when you're Impact, I guess sometimes you get kind of plagued with things, and you already have the reputation of being the Bush League promotion, and this just didn't make them look good. And with this event, it was geared toward new talent getting scouted and signed by Impact Wrestling. And it just kind of makes you wonder, who wants to work for a company that really can't get their shit together. Well, anyway, like I said, the talent did their best. The crowd, the crowd's another story. The crowd was lazy, and I'm not sure if it has to do with, the promotion itself. I keep saying TNA and Impact like it's using that name. Forgive me if I do. But the crowd was just one of those crowds that either they were casuals, and I don't know why a casual fan would be showing up to Impact Wrestling in 2019, unless they got dragged there, I guess. I don't know. But they were quiet a lot of the time. Not all the crowd, but if you go back and if you see this event, if you're able to, you'll see that this was a crowd that pretty much sat on their hands, except for maybe some spots in a lot of matches. I don't like that. It's just not a good look for a wrestling show. It just seems like people showed up just to look at their phones. Doesn't seem like anything that would be interesting if the crowd's not into it, which is, not very respectful toward talent that were putting their all. A lot of these men and women brought their A game. And, it's like I said, a lot of the crowd were being vocal, they were being responsive, but at the same time, you had matches like the one I was looking forward to. You had Alex Zane and Blake Christian and Mark Wheeler going out there and killing it. They had a great match to little to no reaction. Even the big spots that you would see people jump to their feet for and yell for in other promotions, these people, I don't know. But I didn't enjoy that crowd. That did put a damper on the show just as much as the production did. So I give praise to the talent in their matches last night at All Glory, but as far as the production goes, I hope that Impact can do a little bit better going forward, and I guess they will. Everybody has an off night, but that crowd, no, that's not the way to do it. If you're showing up at a wrestling show, you better be there not to be lazy, which is what this crowd was. They were just lazy. You had several points during that show where people were telling them, hey, it's okay to cheer, it's okay to interact. If you have to be told that, you should take that as a hint that maybe you wasted your money if you showed up here just to look at your phone and see what other people were saying on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. You could have stayed home and watched it on Twitch like everybody else. Don't waste your time. So if you go to these shows, no matter if it's Impact, no matter if it's any other indie promotion, show the hell up. Show up, yell, react, boo, cheer. Don't just sit there, especially during great spots. Several great spots were just almost, it seemed like they slept through. And I just, I don't understand that. So that's a mini little rant there. Speaking of rants, I do want to touch on AEW's AEW Dynamite this past Wednesday. Not the show itself. I thought the show was great. Their third show. The response online to Marco Stunt, because the crowd response on AEW Dynamite when Marco had his big moment, and this was his big moment this past week, that Luchasaurus got injured, so Marco, had to step up. And he did. He went out there and he did a great job. And the crowd reacted accordingly to it. So I had no problem with that. But it is the online side of things where it gets ridiculous. You had people going on and, of course, saying things like, he's too small. He doesn't have the look. I don't like his character. Now, of course, I've come to understand that online participation mostly is negative when it comes to wrestling. But these are also people who are sharing their opinion without having seen Marco Stunt on the indies and what he can do. It's one thing to disagree with, having that type of character. Everybody's going to have their opinion. Not everybody's going to like what everybody likes. But you don't have to sit there and disrespect somebody who clearly got signed for a reason. They would not have signed him if they didn't see something in him. And sometimes I kind of think it's jealousy. Sometimes I think a lot of these people who will get online and just disparage people like Marco Stunt, I guess somehow they feel that maybe it could have been their spot. And then when you kind of go back and look, these are people that maybe aren't even wrestlers and certainly don't have the look themselves. Hint, hint. But they will. They'll go on and just be negative. And they don't know their history either. They don't, or either they choose to be ignorant about it. They don't realize that you had this same thing, 20, 25 years ago. This is not anything new. These people going online and talking down Marco Stunt are the exact same people back in the mid-90s when you had Razor Ramon get upset on Monday Night Raw by a young, small fellow who was then called in that match the Lightning Kid, and later became the 1-2-3 Kid after upsetting Razor Ramon, and later became fucking X-Pac. Sean Waltman, considered a WWE legend at this point. So you don't know where Marco Stunt is going to be 10 years from now. You don't know where he's going to be 20 years from now. He is making his name. That's the point. So all of these people who think they have these hot takes, you're not saying anything that has not been said before. You just happen to have a platform, whereas in 1994, people did not, unless they were writing into the aftermags, in which they were. They would say the same exact things you're saying. So it's nothing new. We've heard it before. Move on. But kudos to Marco. Can't wait to see you do more. Other things going on. You had Eric Bischoff. That was kind of a shocking thing. Not necessarily shocking, not necessarily surprising either, but it was a thing that happened this past week. You had Bischoff ousted out of his place on SmackDown by Bruce Pritchard. And of course, Bischoff had not been in that position very long at all. Not to say that Bruce Pritchard doesn't have a great mind for wrestling. I'm actually pretty happy to see Bruce Pritchard working with SmackDown now, because I think he does have a wonderful mind for the business, and he's been around long enough to prove that. And I'm also happy for Eric Bischoff as well. When I first heard that he was going to do the SmackDown side of things, I thought, well, that's great, but whenever it comes to Bischoff and WWE, I always thought that was not a great match to begin with. If you go back in your wrestling history to the 90s, Bischoff and WWE, they were like oil and water. They just did not blend. So anytime you have those two involved, I think it's not going to be great, or he's just going to end up kind of kowtowing to Vince. So I think that this is a good thing, that he could be free and not have to be the company lapdog. I'm interested to see what Bischoff does from here, whether he goes on in the business to provide input for another promotion, Not the fantasy book or anything like that, but I think he has his place. Um, Other things going on. I had a chance to look at SmackDown. I didn't watch it live on Friday. And I've gotten into the habit of reading the results online for SmackDown um, before I go back and actually watch it, just so I can, make sure I'm not wasting my time. I do the same thing for Raw because it is a long show, or at least Raw is a long show. So if I'm not watching live, I'll go back and read the results. And when I read the results on Saturday morning for SmackDown, I was kind of thinking, I'll maybe watch here and there, but nothing has changed yet after the draft. And maybe I'm speaking too soon. Maybe I'll just give it a little bit more time, like I've been giving WWE before. I'm getting impatient, though. I think that it's at a point now where, if it's not going to happen on Friday on that show, when? When is it going to happen? So all this upheaval, all this buildup that they're doing for Crown Jewel in a week or so doesn't seem like it's going to lead anywhere. I don't think Crown Jewel needs to be treated like a standalone pay-per-view as it has been. They could use this opportunity. They could use Crown Jewel as a great lead-in to Survivor Series. But it just kind of seems like Crown Jewel's becoming its own mini Survivor Series with Team Hogan and Team Flair. I don't understand that. You could have had these teams for Survivor Series, and you kind of have to start from scratch once you finish Crown Jewel and frantically put together stories for your big November pay-per-view. So I don't really understand WWE's mindset in having this Crown Jewel pay-per-view, especially as a standalone, which they always seem to do with this. But we'll see where it goes. Like I've said before, you kind of have to take that patient attitude with WWE, as frustrating as it might be, but that's not good for, watching the Monday or Friday show, as it were, because they're not interesting. If we're just kind of looking at the show itself to see, okay, how does this tie into the pay-per-view? No, I think, when I was teaching school, we used to call that teaching to the test. No real content, no real learning, because you're just kind of looking for the next big thing. And we would, look for what we're going to do on the big state tests, but all the content that you teach in the meantime means nothing, So all that content WWE is putting forward, if it's just going towards a big pay-per-view, what's the point of watching on Monday and Friday? I'll just watch the pay-per-view, maybe. So that's where WWE's at, with me at least right now. Thankfully, the indies are saving us. Indies are, like I've said before, if you are jaded with everything else, there's always a good indie promotion that will keep you interested. If you were watching Beyond Wrestling on Thursday, you got to see one of the best main events of the year. One of the best intergender matches I've ever seen before, and one of the best matches of the year. You had Mercedes Martinez versus David Starr, and they went out there and they killed it. They murdered that main event. They made it their own. They were given plenty of time, given nearly a half hour to tell that story, and they damn sure did it. They were able to show everybody that it's possible not only to have a great 30-minute main event that keeps the crowd hot, crowd stayed hot, kept us all just riveted, and to be able to do that with such a small promotion in such a small venue, you kind of are left to wonder, okay, why can't we have that spirit? Why can't we have that energy with multi-million-dollar promotions? And I don't mean just WWE. AEW can learn from this as well. You don't have to have necessarily an intergender match, even though this was a perfect one, in my opinion. Any man or woman who steps in that ring needs to have the mindset that they're going to have the type of match that Martinez and Starr did. There's no reason why you can't. Yeah, not everybody's going to have 30 minutes, but whether you're given 5, whether you're given 10, even if you're given up to 15 in WWE or AEW, that's the kind of match you need to be putting on. So if you have not seen that match, I do encourage you to go back if you have an IWTV subscription or however you can watch that. Yes, go back and watch that Mercedes Martinez and David Starr match just to kind of see how it needs to be done in 2019 and from here on out. In the meantime, that's pretty much all I wanted to say for this week. Really interested in having a look at the week ahead, watching Raw. And I will watch Raw. I won't just read the results because I am kind of interested to see what the lead into Crown Jewel will be and to see where that goes. Looking forward on Tuesday to seeing NWA Power and AEW Dark, and then going on to Wednesday with AEW Dynamite. So I'll check back in midweek and catch everybody up on my thoughts. But in the meantime, have a wonderful, wonderful day.